Hi, my name is Amanda, and hopefully, if you're watching this video, I am a certified health coach specializing in helping people get off and stay off psychiatric medications. This is the first in a vlog series that I'm making, hopefully, to later use as promotional material. I wanted to document some of the thought processes that led me to choose to go down this professional path. And I wanted to document the process of becoming a health coach so that you and potential clients can understand what my work is about and what I have to offer. So, right now, where I'm at with that is I'm working a regular job and I am perusing different certification programs to decide which would be the best one to invest in. A little bit more about me. I'm 43. I live in America. I am someone who's had to deal with a plethora of diagnoses. I most closely identify with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, although when I first started seeking treatment, it was well before the turn to trauma-informed care. And I started as a teenager experiencing mental distress because I grew up in a home where most of my primary caretakers were addicted to drugs and alcohol and were violent with each other and sometimes me. So, I have talked about this before, and I will in other videos lay out the evolution of my diagnoses and what I think that means. For now, what I would like to focus on is what I'm experiencing in real time and what I'm dealing with. One of the dilemmas that I have is recognizing that I have a calling for helping people and that I have a firm belief that psychiatric medications are dangerous to take and harm your body and eventually will leave you in a state of spiritual and mental exhaustion because the efficacy of the treatments is greatly exaggerated by the medical community. So, as a person who very much wants to help and contribute to taking some of the power back from the psychiatric industry, because of the corruption involved, I feel a great pressure to myself be well enough to have credibility to say to people that I'm healed or recovered. And in the social media space, it's a very interesting and lively time because there's an abundance of content creators who are doing just that. The problem then becomes how to go forward with realistic expectations, how to be a role model, and how much to disclose if the struggle is still real for you. So, for example, I have been off medication for the most part for 15 years. I'm not really sure that others would look at my life and call it a success. I'm pretty self-sufficient. I'm very independent. I support myself. I haven't spent a significant amount of time in psychiatric facilities since my early 20s. So, is that clinically a success? Maybe. Does it meet a more broad general definition of success? I don't know. What I want for people to understand is that I'm going to be documenting this because I don't want my content to be feeding a perfectionist urge to say that I have the greatest life ever possible. I worked with somebody who was a lot younger than me, and when she left our job, I contacted her about her new job, and one of the first things she said to me was, "I'm living my best life." And I thought that is a real Gen Z saying, isn't it? I don't know any millennials who are like, "I'm living my best life," but anyway, I digress. So, today I want to talk about work issues, work struggles in the context of people with mental health issues and where we're at with that. For me, work is triggering. I personally find it extremely difficult to hold a job for longer than a year and a half, honestly, 2 years. I did once hold the same position for 3.5 years, and I feel that the fact that it was a work from home job and a gig job and I had great pay probably contributed to that. So, I re-entered the traditional workforce after COVID happened and have done my typical bouncing around, job hoppering ever since. So that's one thing that I was looking to change. I was looking to change that about myself. I was looking to fix the things internally that were driving that behavior. And a very familiar recurring pattern happens again and again. And so that's part of why I'm on the fence about, do I beat myself up if I once again get into that pattern? Or do I say finally to myself, if you're 43 years old and you've had 32 jobs, are jobs the answer? Is it a thing? Is it a you thing? And if it's a you thing, is it fixable? I've really taken in a lot of content about work and the struggles, and not just mental health issues, but the struggles of people in the economy today. And I really I'm inspired by the set that says, yeah, traditional employment just isn't what it was cracked up to be. And if you're struggling, don't take it personally, because it might be a sign that you need to be in business for yourself. So I'm opening my mind to that possibility. But in the meantime, I'm grateful for the paycheck, and I will approach a point very shortly where I will be grateful for the opportunity to once again experience the deeply upsetting pattern again and try to work through it in a different way. So, for example, work is triggering for people who have experienced abuse, either in your childhood or in an abusive relationship, because abuse is about power and dominance and control. I thought, as a young person who experienced that, I can remember telling myself as a child that what it meant to be an adult would be achieving independence enough to have a way to support myself. And that was very, very, very important to me, because depending on my parents the way that I had to growing up meant that they could do and say the things that they did. It meant that as long as I had to be there and had no alternative, that it would continue. So my vision of what it meant to be an adult was getting free of abuse. And I, as a young person, I was really fortunate, because while things and events at home were harsh, unfair, or arbitrary, or neglectful, I didn't experience that of the broader world, because I had a very divided childhood. I was a very happy child at school. School was a great place for me. I was very high achieving. I loved my classmates and my teachers. So I didn't develop the idea that all authority was bad. I didn't act out, and I certainly didn't get a lot of help out of that, but I had a happier time, I would say, because at least there was that. I wasn't bullied. I was pretty fortunate. I had good schools, a good education. So what happened later was the disillusionment and the jarring collapse of the idea that if I just work hard enough, I can support myself and I can take care of myself. Because I didn't really begin to experience the blowback of the dysregulation of my nervous system until I was a young adult, because that's when real pressure happens, right? And one of the reasons why work is triggering for anyone who has had the experience of abuse and trauma is that no matter how you slice it, our workplaces are fundamentally about power, dominance, and control. And there is an element of dependence for the traditional employee that recreates or resurrects the dependence that you felt as a child on your primary or from your primary caregivers. So if you are hypersensitive to power and authority, work can be a great struggle. One of the things that I'm contemplating doing is taking a job as a mental health peer support specialist. I have a lot of qualms. I have a lot of pros and cons circulating through my mind. One of the reservations that I have is that in the job descriptions for this role, they stress that they want people who are bona fide, like, sufferers. Okay. Bona fide sufferers who also maintain full employment for long stretches of time. Why do I think there's an ethical dilemma there? I think there's an ethical dilemma there because it makes full employment one of the baseline criteria for recovery, which points to a value set that all too easily serves power structures. So, given that I have such a bad history of employment, do I want to enter into a role where I may be, counseling or comforting, supporting someone whose mental health may be less well than my own, and making them prepared for entering into stressful situations because somebody else thinks that that is a sign that they're getting better. And do they deserve that? So that's something I'm going to have to figure out and learn more about. So the other thing I want to talk about in this video is whether or not to disclose complex PTSD at work. Right now, I'm having a big eruption of symptoms. I feel very triggered, if you will, because for the last 2 years, I have done a job that I'm perfectly physically suited for, and it has been decided that I need to be transferred to another department where I'm not physically capable of doing an extreme amount of lifting. I do manual labor. I work in a warehouse. And I did not know if they would hire me given my size. I think, honestly, they hired me to get their DEI numbers up. I'm one of 4, 5 women there. And they did, and it was wonderful. And I think I've been viewing the company and the job in general with rose-colored glasses for a long time, precisely because it was exactly what I needed in the moment. What I needed was a job that was as rote, mindless, and boring with good pay and good benefits so that I could recover from some other previous jobs that were anything but that. So, and get myself back on my feet financially without fear that things were going to change so rapidly and it was going to be unsustainable. It's certainly not mentally unsustainable. And this is a very odd, this isn't this is a familiar but unfamiliar situation to me because I'm not mentally overtasked. This is the first time where I've literally had to say for my own safety, I don't think I can lift hundreds of, I don't think I can operate this piece of machinery safely. It has not been met with anything close to anything but dismissal that I would say at this point borders on casual sadism. I'm going to the doctor. That is my last line of defense. I have osteoarthritis in my back. That was one of the things that I managed to heal in the first 6 months of this year, but it has flared up. So I don't really know what's going to happen. What has happened in the past is that being met with unrealistic expectations, given mixed messages at work, trying to set a boundary and having that boundary shredded or trampled upon has engendered in me first frustration, then rage, then the cPTSD kicks in, and then there's a loss of control and a breakdown of communication skills, a breakdown of problem solving, a breakdown of strategizing. And then I feel a panic and I either just explode and get fired, or I explode or I leave because I can't explode again. And I can't bear the shame of that. I mean, frankly, this is a real struggle. Now, it's ironic because at work, the workplace that is very, very high production value. I would say in terms of the political correctness, awareness, our benefits are such that I literally don't even have time to take advantage of all of them. So it is good, but it is a matter of deciphering what is real, what is the kind of political theater that is necessary in a big enough company, in a corporate structure, because it is a very longstanding American corporation that I work for. So that's been interesting to navigate because it's been a while. So I recognized in the moment that I'm having an episode. I'm perseverating, not sleeping enough, having anxiety, rage, flashbacks, a lot of emotional flashbacks. And so I've made a plan as to what I can do to manage this situation, and I'm acting on it. And that has actually calmed me down quite a bit. But it would be absolute bullshit nonsense for me to say, I healed my PTSD, I'm totally recovered, I don't have any of these problems anymore. And I don't want people I want to be a role model, but I feel like there's a lot of pretense in the mental health content sphere. And I really value people like, I would suggest Daniel Mackler, because he's somebody that I think manages the fine line and is actually kind of an antidote to a lot of the mental health content. I'm going to talk about why part of my plan is to stop doing the mental health content perusing that I have been doing. Because it's not helping. And I think I will make that part of my program for potential future clients. Stop watching YouTube videos about your condition. Stop seeking advice, because it's a very safe space to seek advice, because it's one-directional. However, what has been happening for me is that I have been watching video after video after video about how to set boundaries, how to develop self-esteem, how to ask for help, cPTSD, brain scans, etc., etc. And one of the reasons why it's not helping is that when you take in enough of a volume of it, your going to get mixed messages, and you're going to become really frustrated with yourself because you'll think, okay, I'll implement this, or I'll try this strategy, and you're going to get a video saying that's a good idea, and you're going to get another video from an equally qualified person talking about why you should not. So, for example, asking for help. There's numerous videos encouraging people with this condition to speak up, say you're experiencing it, ask for help. Now, that could be an incredibly healing experience if it works. The beauty of being a content creator is that there's no real responsibility, right? And then there's this other content creator that I was following talking about you can't tell people that you're triggered because it's a form, you're trying to use it as a form of power over them. You're trying to use it to control and manage situations. They're not obligated, they're not obliged to help you manage your internal condition, and all of that's very well true. So it's not been helpful in me trying to decide what to do about work. I've never disclosed it as a disability. I've never had that conversation about any of my mental health diagnoses. With respect to PTSD, I will say I would be more likely to disclose only because I feel that the stigma is less than any of the other diagnoses. Because if you have PTSD, and I've said this many times before, people want to know what happened to you, but if you have anything else, people want to know what's wrong with you. What are you going to do? How difficult are you going to be? Right? I mean, it's totally different set of expectations and stigmas. But in thinking about disclosing cPTSD, I think I've exaggerated the extent to which that might be easier for people. Because if you do have it, what it does is open up a conversation, particularly like this happens with medical doctors, for example. Someone was talking about this in a video that I watched. If you disclose that you have that, what question does it populate in that listener's mind is what happened to you, right? So then you're going to philosophically and psychologically broach, even if you don't have this conversation, a sort of, but what is your trauma? And then there's judging and evaluating. Is what your trauma that you think caused you to have this condition, is that going to be enough in the mind of the person you're disclosing it to? And do you want to re-traumatize yourself by having that even come up? So it's tricky. It's a tricky thing. It's part of why I've avoided it. The second reason why I've avoided it is that if you're going to have a conversation with an employer about complex post-traumatic stress disorder, from their perspective, the only utility in that conversation is, does this person need accommodations that I am legally bound to honor? So accommodations. And one of the reasons why I think that is pointless to get there with employers is that people with PTSD may need accommodations, but it's a rare event that they will be able to sit down and name accommodations that are actually feasible. Most of the things that are triggering when it comes to work are a normal part of work that can't be accommodated around, in my opinion, because it is a power, dominance, and control and dependent relationship. So, if I even had the opportunity to spell out or list accommodations, it wouldn't work, because it wouldn't be something like, I need to come in at 8:15 instead of 7 a.m. That has nothing to do with my PTSD. Okay? That's just going to be about me. Maybe I'm seeking to have control. If you really, if you give me that, that means that I've won the battle. I'm using my currency, my social currency of mental illness well. But it won't, it would be dishonest to present that as like, you will mitigate my symptoms or the likelihood of symptoms. So the things that are triggering at work are things like, I need for you to have realistic expectations. I need for you to be transparent enough with me in communications. I need for there to not be mixed messages. I need honesty. So this is a really high bar, and a lot of it has to do with moral values. And the legal framework of workplace accommodations is not about any of that. So that's something to think about. Major reasons not to disclose are that you don't want people to know. It's none of their business. Their knowing may not help you. You may not wish to talk about it, because talking about it doesn't always help. And it's not necessarily going to result in accommodations that work. So it's not always practical. And even the process of trying could be more harmful than helpful. So I recognize that I have been talking a lot about the mental health content sphere while also trying to be in it. So I know there's no getting around the irony or the hypocrisy of that. But I do want to say that I have recently learned from this experience that some of my criticisms of talk therapy aren't necessarily valid, because what we have is a really clear contradiction. Talk therapy was frustrating to me because I would never get any advice. There would not even be any active enough presence on the part of my provider. I would just talk, and it would just be, okay, they're trained and they're conditioned not to coach you, not to offer advice, not to tell you what to do. This is a huge, huge thing in therapy. And now I think I understand why. Because in the absence of talk therapy, I resorted to the YouTube sphere. And I understand now that that could be harmful, because it's making me worse. It's making me feel like I'm not doing this right. I'm not doing this well enough. So I think that there's a problem with not having a direct relationship with one person whom you think really has a message, or really has the qualifications, or really has the experience, that if you choose to take in content, my advice is to choose one stream, one program, one person, and do so very minimally. Okay, so I'll let you know where I'm at with recovering from this latest episode. In the meantime, good morning. I have to get dressed. I have to go to see my doctor now. Okay, bye-bye.